I'm going to steal Stuart's idea and do a little poll of the audience. How many in the audience have actually gotten an RCS message? How many in North America? So with that energetic eye roll, we're going to start with an update with you, Stuart. Like, how are you seeing? I know you're based in the UK, but you're also trying to make inroads into the US. I want to change the conversation a little bit and sort of talking about interoperability from a use case perspective, but talk about it from a trust and identity perspective. And how many, what kind of progress are you seeing in the North American market?
So there's been a lot of talk this morning about, are links safe to click in text messages? What do people do with that? The value of a trusted sender. All of that is available within RCS. The point with RCS, the answer is yes. What's the question, right? It's a technology that's ready to go. We do see real results of all the campaigns we run around the world of greater connection engagement with RCS. We see 40% click-through rate for any links that we put into messages, compared with around sort of 15% now for SMS. We see 99% of our messages are being delivered, and we see those true analytics coming through. And typically we see a very, very high number of messages open, between sort of 40 to 60%. So with RCS, we are seeing the value of trust. It comes not just from the little check mark that sits at the top of the sender agent, but also all the branding that comes associated with that, the logos, the colors, and the taglines, etc.
That's great. Are you talking? So I'll go over to you, Sylvia, and your progress as you're seeing from the InfoBip sort of side of the fence in terms of interoperability.
Yeah, just in Barcelona, actually, a couple of weeks back, I was thinking about our very first campaign that we did, and it was 5 years ago. We did a pilot with Uber on Vodafone UK network. So looking back, I know it sometimes doesn't feel like it's moving, but we did come a long way. So now I cannot even keep track of all of the campaigns that have been rolled out globally, because we operate from India over Europe to LATAM, and before we celebrated each and every campaign that we had. We see a lot of engagement from the brands who want to make an impact on trust and security, and use RCS as an opportunity to make another brand impression. Because, like Stuart said, you have the logo, you have the check mark, you have something that the end customer can relate to and really recognize, okay, this is the brand, this is somebody I can trust. I will click on this link on this button. So I see this RCS conversation going in two directions. So the trust and identity is definitely important to improve, like, let's say, the current experience that we have on SMS, but also the richness of the channel and all the cool features that we usually talk about, like the carousels, the buttons, and stuff like that, help us expand the whole messaging pie, because now you can do so much more with messaging. So it's not only about improving the current experience, but helping the ecosystem grow and really bring value to everybody in the chain.
So I'll use that as a way to segue into the next question, which is in terms of reach, and then I'll look at you, David. What's the reach right now in North American market? If you had to put a number on it, I know you can't share all.
I mean, pues, clearly speaking, we have more than 100 million RCS users. When we talk about RBM...
Worldwide or in the US?
Only in the US.
Okay.
Only in the US. Worldwide, we're probably close around, I cannot say exactly, but close to 1 billion probably.
Okay.
We will see probably numbers later on in time. The point is more about the RBM reach, because right now, only 1/3 of those 100 million users are reachable. And it doesn't require that much of a work to some extent, technically speaking. There are other elements that needs to be taken into account, but probably we could grow very easily from what today probably means around 10% penetration to 30% penetration. If you combine this with some of the comments here about verification and trust, and the idea to create rich experiences, we're talking about something that the really brands appreciate. I mean, we have seen, for example, brands that even with the 10% reach, they're seeing a lot of value. In fact, we're not talking here about just pure messaging communications. We are talking about a channel that can enable a business on a full digital transformation. So from the moment that consumers can discover their brands, to the moment that they already convert to a real existing user, to the moment that they drive the engagement, the customer service.
So a little bit personal story for you. You were with WhatsApp before Google. So well, you get to speak for two big monoliths then. Let's talk about RCS as, is it still, should it worry about WhatsApp?
Well, my perspective, and probably it's my personal perspective to some extent, because I've been seeing the two worlds, and I've been in the industry as well as on the high-tech industry at both times. I believe that there are specific use cases where every channel can perform really, really well. No, we've seen, for example, that to some extent, if you want to maybe connect with a business because you have a problem and you want to initiate the conversation, maybe WhatsApp can be an interesting channel for that one. But at the end of the day, if a business wants to engage with the user and reconnect with them, we have seen much more interest from consumers to reply to RCS messages than to WhatsApp, for example, just to name some few. One of the reasons is RCS is very native. So people, it's part of Android messages, so it's really native to the channel. And when the users are used to receive communications from the brand, basically this is a natural extension to it. We have seen as well brands are really attractive for using it because, basically when they have the opt-ins or SMS, and because this is regulated and this is carrier-led, RBM is an extension, a natural extension for the opt-ins. No, you don't need to create more opt-ins than the ones that you already have with SMS.
That's a great point.
Can I just jump in there, TJ? I think this point about the fact that Google are working with the carriers is really important. You know, where you have customers already opted in for SMS services, you know, we transfer that onto MMS. We can also transfer that onto RCS, right? So we don't need to go and seek an additional opt-in. And that's really important for adoption. This channel's ready to go as soon as the traffic is there. And like I say, that's purely because Google have chosen to work with the carriers, unlike Meta, who work against the carriers.
Rami, do you have?
I've been a big proponent for RCS for years, but I think just speaking about the US market, I think we're 2 to 3 years behind the rest of the world. The reach is terrible. Like if we look at 10% for business messaging, it's not exciting for any brand other than a few innovators that I'm sure you guys are all sick of hearing about the same brands over and over with every panel. We're not seeing new brands come on board. It's very hard to convince them to do the innovative hero use case because, yes, we have 10% reach, but you intersect that with an opted-in list from a brand, that number goes from 10 to 8 to 5% reach. Why would they invest in 5% of their population?
But what about reporting? And just to come back to that as a counter.
But the benefits, they want something ubiquitous. You want something that works with every device, or at least the big population of the devices. So if I look at RCS in Mexico or in Brazil, it's doing great because there's a huge population that's using it, and it's penetrating almost all of the Android devices that are there. We're seeing great results from Spain. We heard from Orange Spain a couple of weeks ago that they're actually looking at how do you make RCS the entry point into the network, where the network falls back to SMS, not the opposite, right? So I think we're seeing a lot of the operators take proactive steps. In the US, it's kind of been dark. And I know each one of us are having conversations with the operators, but we're not seeing any momentum moving it forward. Everybody has a pool of devices that's being protected, and it's not growing. It's very slowly growing. If we look at the past couple of years of growth, and I ask Google all the time, we've been hovering around that 10% for a couple of years now.
Can I say something? Well, first of all, the truth is we are growing 31% year on year, not on RBM, well, partially on RBM, but on RCS users. So it will be relatively easy to some extent, obviously. I don't want to put words on somebody that I'm not working on right now, that we could easily reach 30% if the network.
And I don't think there's a disagreement. I think the peer-to-peer is advancing pretty well in terms of reach because of the work the carriers have done, Google, what you've done. Maveneer are in here. You guys did a lot of work with getting the clients, working on networks and all that. I'm not disagreeing, but the result from a business messaging perspective is pretty stagnant.
So there is another comment on that front, and it's true that it's much more harder sell to the brands, but when we're selling to some of the brands, they get sticking to
The
using
results
it.
are phenomenal.
The results are phenomenal.
Yeah, the results are phenomenal.
Which is the most incredible thing, by the way. And
Like, I think with Walgreens, when we did a campaign with them, there was an end change in the number of prescriptions that were refilled. And that's true dollars in their pocket. That's a true measurable number of dollars that you can say this brand made X% more a year because of introducing an RCS as a channel. Best Buy, the same thing with their order pickups. And like we have, all of us here can bring out the solid examples that RCS made a difference. And I think nobody is negotiating the benefits of RCS or discounting them. I think it's a huge channel. It has huge potential. We just need it opened up and pushed forward. We've seen trials in the UK where operators are taking proactive steps to open P2A, whether it's through directories or QR codes or whatever it is. They're actually taking steps to open up and getting it. We're actually seeing incentives from operator where an RCS message in certain markets is cheaper than an SMS message to get the brands excited, but they have reach. They have a healthy number of users that are using the channel for business messages purposes. And that's what gets brands excited.
yeah. So, well, I mean, you're right on that front, although I can tell that we've been exploring with some brands here in the US, and because they're getting really good results in other parts of the world, they're willing to explore even that 10% is happening. So hopefully soon, in partnership with one of the carriers, we can bring some of them, and maybe we can provide more examples. I can mention some good names that are happening right now in the rest of the world. I mean, it's like we have Netflix, for example, running campaigns, or Burger King, or Buffalo Wings, or Budweiser. We are engaged with some other airlines in some other parts of the world where they are starting even to do online boarding and check-in. And because of the nature of the channel, your Android messages is part of Android. We do native integrations with Google Maps. One of the areas that we're exploring is, for example, the idea of wallets. So loyalty cards, the idea of ticketing and things like that are gonna things that we can potentially do. So if we can convert that 10%, 30%, that would be
But
way more impactful.
I think there's bigger potential. Like, I think if you look at the operators in the room, and I'm looking at all of you here, you guys are the biggest enterprise for your own customers. You got to start using the service to raise external brand awareness, user awareness for the channel. Start using it for your own service. You guys have the biggest penetration for RCS services for your own base. If you think of the intersection I was talking about, if it's a true 10%, then the operator can reach each and every subscriber of that 10% because they get an update that their bill's ready, or they're running out of airtime, or they need to top up their like, they touch point with each and every consumer on a monthly basis. So use the channel that you want us as aggregators to start using. Like, push it out to your own consumers, get them to engage with you on these channels, because that's how you raise awareness and say to the external brands, we're open for business.
I couldn't agree more with that part, because before you started, I just wanted to say it's not only about the reach that we have. RCS or RBM, it doesn't have identity like WhatsApp has. So everybody, even my mother, my father, they know what WhatsApp is. So A2P is driven actually by the P2P adoption, and everybody knowing what it actually is. On RBM and RCS, we don't have that. So I really feel like we could get so much more out of this 10% if the market knew what RCS and RBM is.
Like, I look at an example in the UK, a big red carrier, I'm not gonna say who they are, but every Android phone that turns on gets a welcome RCS message to say, welcome to
This
your
is what
carrier.
we need, yeah.
Here's your services. They get an image, some nice buttons. Now every user looks at that and says, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that.
Well, one thing I want to pick up on is that, you know, RCS is fantastic technology. We know that it does images, it does buttons, it does carousels. And I think the industry's been a little naive just to assume that, you know, all the functionality is here now, everyone's going to want to jump on it. And to the point of how do we drive adoption, I think a key technique, and Google are pushing this really hard, and you're going to hear also more about this, is to take that SMS traffic. There's billions of SMS messages every day. How much of those can we convert and upgrade to RCS? That will really, I truly believe that will drive adoption, because then people will see it arriving on their handsets, people will see what it looks like. The people who are receiving upgraded SMS messages are also marketing directors. They'll see these messages. That's what's going to drive adoption, and that's going to be the focus, certainly I think for Cinch during this year, as well as continuing to build those hero use cases and working with brands to develop all that cool stuff and supporting the carriers to talk to their customers.
And I think we have a lot of the infrastructure in place from us as aggregators to start doing that, but I think working with each other and as an industry, we need to simplify some of the barriers of entry into the market, right? Today, we onboard a client on SMS. There's a defined process for whether it's a short code, a long code, there's a verification, program briefs. Why don't we use the same thing to say, okay, well, you can do basic messaging as well, because it's the same 160 characters. We're just sending them over RCS instead of SMS, extend the same verification over to RCS where that name and logo, without having to go through a rigorous onboarding process of another verification cycle.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of points, picking up that element of the conversation. One is, clearly, this is not only a Google work to drive awareness. I mean, obviously, Google is a big company, and it could do more advertising, but at the end, this is an ecosystem play, so we need the help of all of you to really drive the awareness, and we're more than happy to support things and drive more awareness with brands, but we need more support as well in that front. The second is, it's true, we've been exploring the idea of what we call basic message, and in some markets, and I'm going to give you a clear example, in Mexico, for example, the third biggest bank in Mexico, they decided to do the natural migration for SMS into basic message. They got 20% more responses for users first, just because they saw the verification logo and the branding logo there. The second thing that they found, it was way more incredible, is because of the analytics, they found out that what they were expecting the users were going to behave with SMS was totally different. So some segmentations that they were expecting to receive and to be more interactive with messagings, they were not doing that. And other type of segments that were expecting they were not going to be that engaged, they were. So as a result of it, they start redefining their own marketing and communication campaigns, based on just only a simple implementation between SMS to basic message.
So then what I'm hearing is and this is, again, I'm making controversial statements on stage, is to fix RCS for P2P so the consumer can care that they should get a rich message.
I think peer-to-peer is fixed. I think peer-to-peer is working. I think peer-to-peer is actually growing from an RCS perspective.
Well, then I would argue that I should be able to send an SMS message as an RCS, and I should get the beautiful delivered status that shows up and then below my text message that I get from let's say, Blue Bubble or a WhatsApp message, right?
Yeah, I think if we're in an ideal world, we're all on the same carrier. We're texting all our friends and family on the same carrier. We're not seeing interconnect yet in the US for RCS, I know Sprint, T-Mobile did that. I know there's a lot of work going into it, but we'd love to see a world beyond an island where I can message someone on Verizon and T-Mobile, where we have a group chat on RCS. It's work. I know there's a lot of work going into it to make it happen. And Google's doing a lot of work, and I think Cineverse and others are all putting a lot of effort into it. But that doesn't stop the business messaging side. I think they're two separate streams, because all of us sitting here on stage, we thrive and charge more on the complexity, right? Our businesses thrive on more complex problems to solve, and that's a known problem for us. We know how to solve it.
Yep. So I'll stay on that because I did poll LinkedIn for questions for RCS because I was running out of questions to ask about carousels and call to actions. I will skip over the question from John, from this guy named John Campbell, that Stuart might know about your
I have
client.
no idea who that guy is.
Yeah. I'll go to Michael Power, had this question about P2A. Are there any efforts around directory services to get P2A messaging up person to application?
So P2A has been around since the standard has been written. I think our friends at AT&T launched an MVP a long time ago with Samsung devices, and everybody's like, oh, this looks like, well, what is this? But I actually say thank you guys for doing that, because it was a great product launch to say, here's what it could look like. Here's how brands, it wasn't maybe the sexiest looking interface, but it was an effort to put it out there and get it out there to show brands that it's possible. And we actually ran with the 3CI team a campaign saying, oh, you guys want a spot in the AT&T directory? And brands actually came to sign up for it. I think that form wouldn't have lived forever, because we know it's going to change. What I like seeing is that our friends in the UK are running a trial right now on launching a directory service with all of them, right? Where it's more dynamic, it's more modern, I would say, than the old view, where it's actually bringing new types of enterprises and content providers into that directory. And that's what excites user. Why would they come back if the information there is stale?
Well, on regards to P2A, we definitely are exploring the idea. Obviously, there are different forms. We've seen as well other partners that they've been creating kind of direct links so they can enable. And we obviously seen, for example, in the latest MEF Connect in London with QR codes that you could enable this, or RCS World, for example. We believe that there's a good opportunity. We've seen that P2A drives A2P traffic too, so which is quite interesting from the lens. I mean, and in the way that in some of the research that we've done, we're talking about maybe incremental 20% just because of that. And I think this is something that we definitely should explore, although it requires more technology, and there are so many problems that we have to solve first in order just to bring this forward. But definitely it's something that we're keeping an eye on it.
I mean, if we want to unlock the channel for customer support, it's a must. We need to offer the user an easy and nice way to reach out to the brand, because we see it's working on other channels. It's working perfectly on WhatsApp, on Viber, and we need it if we really want to provide end-to-end improved experience.
But of course, the conversation doesn't have to start on RCS. It can start on SMS, right? And then automatically detected, yes, this person originating a conversation is RCS capable, let's reply using RCS. Because it all lives in the same inbox. It's a kind of a seamless experience for the user.
On that note, thank you for that note, because on that, I would like to open up for questions from the audience. In the back, Tom.
Is this on there? I haven't been part of seen an RCS panel since 2019 at Mobile World Congress, and at the time, the 800-pound gorilla in the room was Apple and the closed box of iMessage. Has there been any changes since 2019, and if not, what's the game plan?
Can I just say that anyone who had someone mentioning Apple on their bingo card can cross that off now?
I was waiting for this one, actually.
I don't think RCS is. I think Apple stated it publicly that they're. What are you talking about? What's RCS, right? I don't think that's going to change anything in the conversation. The U.S. is a 50-50 split at best between iPhone and Android, maybe 60-40. The carriers can confirm that. I don't think RCS is hooked on Apple adopting it or not. If they adopt it, it's great because it opens up 60% or 50% instantly. But we have other channels. We have SMS. It's still a viable, useful, largely used, successful channel that's there to reach iPhones. So I think the Apple question, we're not going to get an answer from Apple until it's released in the next iOS, which we don't know. Maybe it's 10 years from now.
We'll see. I mean, we'll get the message. Probably you saw Google's campaign to Apple. So we want to keep sure that at the end of the day, consumers are aware that there is a difference. You know that in Europe we have the Digital Media Act as well that is working on, so maybe that can speed up things. We don't know. But what I always tell to the brands and to the partners that they think about that is like, well, if you're a digital marketeer and you want to run a campaign on Instagram, you're not going to do it exclusively on Instagram. You're going to do it in TikTok. You're going to go in Google as well to some extent. So think about RBM as a digital channel where you're going to do more things, and even that the reach is not going to be 100%, still is going to drive you really good business outcomes. And when the brands start executing it, and as Rami has mentioned, the results are really great. So they don't care as much as the reach as far as they can really get better results, better analytics, and much better experience for their customers. And hopefully, maybe at one moment in time, consumers will ask Apple, hey, we want RCS, and they will decide just to bring it.
Yeah, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, when the Android users begin to receive more and more of these text-based messages with the branding, with the logos, and their friends and family see that and think, well, why can't I get that on my handset? It's almost the reverse of what Apple are doing with their business messages, where they want to make that a really fantastic experience, and it is a fantastic experience, not available on Android. Now, Android has got its own weapon in that battle to say, this is how cool text messaging can look, and why doesn't it look like that on an iPhone? We'll see how it plays out.
I just want to go back to the Apple thing real quick. Apple was never going to support A2P over RCS. It was only P2P. So that's always, to me, a red herring. But to go back to what you were saying about carrier education to the consumers on RCS, great story. I'm sitting with a very large carrier, 195 million subscribers. You all know who it probably is, with 90% Android devices, with the CTO. And I said, you have RCS right now? He goes, no, I don't. Well, give me your Samsung. I turned on chat. He sat for 45 minutes with his guys around him using RCS. And this was the CTO of the company, didn't even realize that RCS was currently available on his network. So that education to the consumers in the network that RCS is currently available, and then you can roll out A2P and business messaging, et cetera, but just these people are finding it by accident, or they're not actually grabbing it, and I think that is just a small first step for a carrier with 195 million subscribers with 90% Android devices that the CTO of the company didn't even realize he was able to do RCS. It's crazy. Never seen anything like that in my life. So what you're all saying is correct, and I think that if that's a takeaway, especially for the carriers in the room and for the people who are working with the carriers in the room, just to educate their consumers that it's there available today in most markets that Google has rolled out Jibe.
Yeah, these are some of my favorite campaigns. We just recently did one with Deutsche Telekom and Spotify. So they were using RCS to not only promote Spotify Premium, which is hugely popular in Europe, but also to build awareness about the channel, about this channel amongst their user base. So it was a win-win situation, really, for them.
That's a great point. And on that note, we have one more.
Noted, by the way.
One more question. Yeah.
So we heard a few speakers and people in the audience talking about the education of the market for RCS. And we see this all the time. People just don't know about RCS. I think all of us know it. But whose responsibility is it to educate? Is it even that clear? I mean, is it Google's? Is it telcos? Nobody's doing it. It's
All
like
of us.
following
All
up
of
the
us,
program.
absolutely, all of us. Yeah, I mean, we all have to get together and do that, for sure.
Well, clearly, Cinch is not going to be responsible to educate consumers about RCS. If it is, then you need a much larger budget, a much larger company.
Well, I mean, like I said earlier, I think the education will come from the SMS messages that people are receiving today being converted and sent as RCS. People will begin to see this and think, what is this thing? Why is this thing arrived with a picture? Why does the sender look like this? What does this check mark mean?
But I think you have things in reverse. You're saying that the business messages will educate people about P2P RCS. That's not how any other application has worked. And that's, I think, a recipe for a failure, because you are really banking upon, let's start business messaging first. If it succeeds, then it will educate people that say there is something called RCS.
I think the education is happening by itself. I think with the interconnect between the operators, just using the service, users are smarter now. They see that verified check mark. They don't need an education to understand what it means. They see the delivered and sent and read They know that because they're using social media, they're using other apps to communicate. The training is there, they're just not seeing it enough. I may see it talking to Stuart because we're on the same network and we have both Androids, but we're not seeing it with the rest of the family because we're the minority that has Androids and everybody else has iPhones. So when the user starts getting messages from their carrier, from their pharmacy, from their hardware store, and they see the branding, they see the deliver, they see the red, the education happens by itself. It's not just us or the carrier. I can't say, carriers, it's your job to educate. We're not going to do anything until you guys are fully educating all your youth. It's not going to work. It's an ecosystem. We all have to work together to get it done.
Yeah, it was a combination of factors, I would say. We need to do the migration from SMS to basic message. We need to educate brands. We need to keep sure that we continue pushing the market, and to some extent, maybe these welcome bots that we've seen in the UK, for example, they can be running on other markets. So, I mean, it's like at the end of the day, it's not going to be only one factor, the one that is going to drive. But the key message is like, this is not only just one company trying to drive everything. It's something that we have to do together.
And I think we're doing a lot for the sake of education. I don't think any of us are making a ton of money off of RCS right now. We're doing it to educate brands. We're doing it to help get the adoption and reach out there. And we have to continue doing it. It's a cost of doing business.
I just want to add that as an operator, I mean, Google certainly is doing what they can to try to get us to market it, right? So that's part of their strategy. And the problem is, I mean, I own business messaging. I don't own devices. The device strategy at an operator, at least my operator, is customer choice. And RCS doesn't have the penetration in North America for me to convince that marketing arm to educate them. So I don't know the solution here, but I'm not convinced on the end user educating themselves. I'm not. I don't think they care. I think the only way they're going to educate themselves are the deprecation from the things they're used to getting on WhatsApp or Apple Business Chat. It's not about the fact that they're going to notice. I don't think they're going to notice images. I think they're going to notice the absence of images. Like to me, the experience that the people expect now because of Facebook and all the other social media apps is rich media. And when it's missing, all they're going to do is change channels. So I don't know the solution to it, but I don't think they're going to educate themselves. And I'm not sure that the incentive for the carrier is quite there to also be the ones responsible to educate. So it's a pretty big challenge for us, and which I agree we have to solve together, but I don't know.
All right, we're out of time, but thank you to the panel for this very spirited debate. Thank you so much.